Tucker Carlson and Matt Walsh just blasted American neocons for rejecting America First principles, but that's a little bit ironic given that Matt Walsh himself works for one of the Pied Piper institutions of Neocon Inc., that being the Daily Wire. But he answers that question. They get into how our foreign policy has been tarnished and how, if the current MAGA civil war can be resolved. So let's watch. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
I guess what has really brought this to the fore is a guy called Randy Fine, who's a congressman from Florida who, I disagree with on a lot. I don't think I disagree with him on anything, actually. He spent his career in the gambling business, exploiting people, and now he got some kind of clever way to find a House seat in Florida. Everything about it I disapprove of, and of course I don't like his foreign policy views, but there are a lot of people like that, and I'm not mad at them. What makes him unusual is that he said out loud what I think a lot of people think, which is like, it's hilarious to see a picture of a dead child in Gaza. Somebody tweeted him, I know you're online, you've seen this, a picture of a dead baby in Gaza, and he laughed at it and said, someone said, how can you sleep at night? Getting self-righteous with him, okay. Being high-handed like the anti-war left is, how can you sleep? But, okay, so I get it, they're annoying, but like, it is like, his response was, very well, thank you. Thanks for the pic. If that's your gut reaction to a picture of a dead baby, we are not on the same side in any way. On the deepest level, we're not on the same side. I'm a father. Like, I'm not, how can I laugh at that? I can't. And that to me revealed what I think a lot of people think, who I know very well, who call themselves conservatives, which is just like, these are not human beings. Well, if you've got that attitude, how can you really care about me or my country or my children? Like, I don't think you can.
Well, that doesn't even make Randy Fine unusual. Brian Mast, another congressman from Florida, famously tweeted that there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian. And this is just talking points from the Likudniks, the right-wing coalition in charge of Israel's government right now, with Smotrich saying that the people of Gaza should be starved out, that there will be Israeli settlements in Gaza, with Israel Katz talking about a concentration camp to be built in the ruins where Rafah once stood. He calls it sometimes a humanitarian zone, as if the forced relocation of peoples is humanitarian in any way. That's actually a qualifier for genocide under the Geneva Conventions, but I digress. So it's not even that Randy Fine has stood out like a sore thumb on this. Several other congressmen have used that sort of rhetoric. And Randy Fine himself, in an interview on Fox News in May of this year, said that Gaza should be nuked twice to make it just like the United States treated the Japanese during World War II. So that's what you're dealing with here. Vile, monstrous neocons that seem to have Trump's ear on foreign policy as it pertains to Israel.
Yeah, I think that I certainly would agree with you on that. If you think that dead kids are funny, then we're not just on the same side, but this goes back to, I don't think we're living in the same universe.
You're the leftists that you described.
Yeah, because you fundamentally cannot value human life if you could ever see it as funny that a child was
I think.
killed.
Okay, I'm going to stand up for the leftist dissidents, the real anti-war leftists here. That's not their viewpoint. Quite to the contrary, when they've stood up against Israel's atrocities long before most people on the right. So I just have to say that that's wrong, and it's something that I have a big problem with when it comes to the modern right. To think that's leftism when the real leftism totally objected to that for decades, and now, right-wingers to some extent are generally catching up. Now, not without exception, there was Ron Paul and Pat Buchanan and some others, but largely that's not a leftist viewpoint. It's a liberal establishment viewpoint for sure, because the Chuck Schumers of the world don't care about that.
So for sure. And I think that there are people that we would call neocons that are definitely not conservative by any stretch. My only point to you is that I think there are plenty of people who are on the other side of the argument who are conservative, and they just don't agree with the premise that you're laying out. They don't, and they do want to preserve human life. They think this is the way to do it. They could be wrong, but people can be wrong about it.
Or they haven't thought about it, or the partisan system. I'll speak for myself. I didn't think about it at all. And all the people getting mad about Hiroshima hated America. It was just a fact. And they wanted to say that all American military expeditions were immoral because America was fundamentally immoral. That's the point they were making. They wanted us to hate ourselves. They taught us a history that convinced our kids to hate themselves and to hate their own country. And that's all evil, and we're watching the results of it now. So I was like, man, there's no way I'm on their side. Like, they hate everything that I love, including my nation. So I just was like, if you're for it, I'm not for it. And because I'm a child that way. Like, I just react against things.
Yeah, well, here's where I'll beat back at Matt Walsh. If he rejects Tucker's premise that this is a genocide, this is evil, and we shouldn't have this connection to the Israeli government, where are the prominent Zionists arguing their case? They don't. They generally just call people that disagree with them anti-Semites. It's the same woke tactics wielded by the liberal establishment against many conservatives. They just try to get away from the argument, try to make it vanish into thin air by just calling you a racist but a different flavor. And that pertains to your boss, Ben Shapiro, who won't debate anyone on this topic, despite that being, I don't know, his primary topic as a quasi-Israeli spy living in this government.
But now I'm feeling like I got misled into supporting an awful lot of violence, like a lot of violence. And how is that good?
Yeah, I think, well, so there's two things. First of all, maybe there's a whole other category we should be talking about, because we're talking about, left, right, conservative, liberal. Then you also have, though, politicians who often, not always, but often are neither. And they don't have an ideology.
Yeah, for sure.
And their ideology is control and power, and that's what they care
about.
What
percentage would you say fall into that category?
95%.
It feels that way, doesn't it?
I'll amend that. I think it used to be 95% I want control and power. I think now it's more like, and this is even worse, now it's like 70% want control and power, and then you've got another 20% who they're just there because they want attention, like the Jasmine Crockett's.
Right.
They're just there because they want to be influencers, like Jasmine Crockett.
I think this is remarkably charitable statistics, by the way. As far as I see it, it was only Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie and Rand Paul standing against all the ambitious stooges in Congress. And there's ambitious stooges in the deep state, too, that wield incredible power that, just remain in power regardless of who you elect as well. So it goes far deeper than just our elected officials. But yeah, Congress is a corruption zone. That's what it is. It should just be renamed Washington District of Corruption. That's what it should be.
I'm so grateful for her. She amuses me every day.
But if you were to go to Jasmine Crockett and say, okay, here's two buttons. Press one button and you're the President of the United States. Press the other button and you have 50 million Instagram followers. And you're an Instagram. She is pressing the Instagram button in a 100%. Second. But that's a different species of politician we've never really seen before.
Yeah, no, it's so true.
Because up to this point, every single politician, I can be president. I'll take that over. If it's I'll press this button, you can be president, but as a consequence, your whole family dies. They're pressing the button.
Oh yeah,
a lot of these people. And now it's a little bit, there are people who they're politicians, they're not even really hungry for power, they just want attention, which I think in some ways is somehow even worse. But anyway, the just want power category, I think that does describe a lot of the people we would call neocons. Lindsey Graham is for sure in this category. I don't know where it was, he gave a speech recently, he was talking about, I think it was him bragging about how we ran out of bombs or something like that.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham is in that category, Matt. And guess whose foreign policy is indistinguishable from Lindsey Graham's? Your boss, Ben Shapiro, who supported all the wars: Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Yemen, war in Iran. Supported at least to some extent the war in Ukraine. I think he still does. He might still want to give them aid, but he has been outspoken about that, getting every single foreign policy catastrophe wrong. Ben Shapiro's indistinguishable from Lindsey Graham, who you are now slamming. Think about that. But the Daily Wire is where your bread is buttered, so I guess you can't say that, right? And by the way, it was a problem for Ben Shapiro that Tucker Carlson would have conversations with people he didn't like, and he told Megyn Kelly the reason why Tucker Carlson's an anti-Semite is because he doesn't think Zohran Mamdani is an anti-Semite, and then said, anti-Semitism can be transferred through communication with individuals. Well, Matt Walsh is here talking to him. Michael Knowles just talked to him too. But I don't think Ben Shapiro is going to come out and rake these guys over the coals for being anti-Semitic. Why? They bring him money. That's why. It's not about principles for Ben Shapiro.
I think I have the right person here.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, you obviously do not take human life seriously if you just think it's like you just want to run out of the bombs. And for someone like him, this is not someone who's a conservative at all. He doesn't. But it's not for someone like him. He doesn't. I don't think that he's passionately in favor of like abortion or destroying the family. He just doesn't care.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
No.
It doesn't matter to him. So I think that's the other category that exists.
That's really smart. That's really smart. It's like post-ideological. It's even kind of post-power. It's just pure narcissism.
Yeah, I mean, just the types of people that stand in Washington are really special types of people in a way. To have just this resistance toward any semblance of morality when you support policies that are guaranteed to kill hundreds of thousands of people, of which Lindsey Graham is one, Randy Fine is one, Brian Mast is one, Mitch McConnell's been one forever. You know, on and on and on. They're on the right-wing establishment and the left-wing establishment of this monstrous system.
How is this current conflict, the intra-right conflict, resolved?
I don't know. I if I knew how to do it, I would do it. Mm-hmm. If I knew how to solve it, if I knew how to bridge the divide and get everyone on the same side again, I would do it. I've tried in my own way.
I know.
I have not been successful. I have tried.
You're like the last person with a foot in each world. It's interesting.
And I value that. Like this isn't for me. This is what people have to understand. I try not to take it personally. The insults. I mean, when you're in this world, you get insulted all the time, and you have
do.
You have to have thick skin. There are certain attacks against me that I should not admit this, but I will. That do bother me. Like they do.
Like what? Okay, you opened it. You opened the door. So
well.
That he has to toe Ben Shapiro's lines because that's the classic affront or attack against him in his mind. That he has to just keep one foot in the neocon establishment because of Ben Shapiro. But guess what won't solve this GOP civil war? It won't get people on the same side. It's fence-sitting like Matt Walsh, saying literally he doesn't care about the genocide in Gaza, yet still professes to be pro-life. In one of the most important moral questions, not only of us as humans, but as it pertains to U.S. foreign policy. It's like not having an opinion on the Iraq War in 2003, or not having an opinion on the COVID regime and the lockdowns and the totalitarian enactments of the government in 2020 and 2021. That's what this is like. It's not having the moral courage, when it's most controversial to do so, to stand on principle. It's not what Matt Walsh is willing to do.
Charges of, well, when people say things that just aren't true, like, and it happens all the time, and it's the one thing I should be the most used to, I guess, that I am, but it just pisses me off.
Really?
Like, it does, because I'm
the opposite. It's only the true attacks that upset me.
I don't know. Yeah, it shouldn't, but when people are, I see someone, make a claim, especially if it's someone, it doesn't have to be, but especially if it's someone who I kind of know, and even if it's not, but saying something that says like, it's not true. You're ascribing motives to me that are, it's just the exact opposite of what is actually true. And you're not even asking me, you're not reaching out, you're not giving me a chance to speak for myself.
Who did that to you?
And I here's the thing, I talked about loyalty before. Yeah. I'm so devoted to it that I have people I consider friends who have been attacking me publicly, and I still don't want to attack them
Welcome
back.
To my world.
I still don't want to
Do
name
you feel like there's a connection between the degree to which you've helped someone and the vehemence of the attack? I've noticed that in my life, I'm not whining, and I agree with you. I hate whining. Oh, I'm being attacked. I'm being threatened. Someone shot at my house. Like, I'm never going to say that.
Good, because that's the victimhood ideology of both the Zionist right and the woke liberal establishment that we should totally reject wholesale. And the same tactics are used to try to make oneself a victim, to perpetuate this America First attitude, not only in regard to our foreign policy, but the Israeli influence in our own country, which robs us of sovereignty. Good, Tucker.
Okay, though it's true. But I have noticed that a lot of people I've helped are like on the front lines of attacking me or calling me names they know aren't true, Nazi. And I feel like there's a connection. It's not random. It's like if you've helped someone, maybe they resent you for it.
I don't
down?
know. Yeah, there might be some of that. I mean, there's a lot of things. First of all, everybody's very emotional. Like, and I try to keep that in mind too. People, I try not to do the thing that pisses me off so much people do to me, which is ascribing motives and saying, well, you're really doing this because of this. And I think sometimes people do, a lot of people do have ulterior motives, clearly. And people are scheming and they're playing games. And also, by the way, we live in a space like this is a business and people do this for a living. And so there's also just competitiveness.
No, it's right.
And that happens.
I guess.
But then at the same time, people also get just pissed off and they get emotional.
Well, that's definitely true.
And there's
Yeah, I mean, that's obvious, though, because women and children are being killed in Gaza and have been by the multitudes, by 100 times the amount of people that died due to the Hamas attack on October 7th. You have over 100,000 people dead there with Israeli data, a leaked database, showing that 83% of the people that died there were innocent civilians. They weren't part of Hamas or Islamic Jihad. That story has been covered in depth. So that's a monstrosity. That's a genocide. And then the other side is going to get emotional too, saying that this throws into question your entire religious sacramental devotion to this foreign rogue state. Of course they're emotional. You have murder on one side, and then the other side in desperation lashing out because their Israel First principles are being challenged and they're losing their stranglehold on the American people for the first time. That's the dynamic you have here, and it's not going to be solved by believing that this is something that you just don't take a stance on, that you can mend these tensions between the right when, people are waking up for the first time on the right to it. Good. It's about time, I would say, as a right-wing libertarian dissident that has thought this for a long time. But at the same time, you're not being courageous by trying to mend those tensions just for the sake of those tensions being mended. You can have friends in any camp, but you don't have to denounce someone, Matt Walsh, such that you still take an argument on the subject in question. You don't have to denounce Ben Shapiro to be like, yeah, this isn't a genocide. We shouldn't have any role in this. It doesn't have to happen that way. So to conflate denouncing people with taking a moral stand is wrong. And I think that's something that Walsh does.
And that's happening on all. So I recognize that. Like so that's why some of the people that go after me publicly, even people I consider friends, and I'm like, you have my phone number, you can call me, and you're not. And I try to maybe it's for my own sanity. I try to be as charitable as possible and think like, well, they're wrong, but they're really angry, and they've got this whole story about me that's not correct. But that's what's happening. They're just pissed off, and I've been pissed off before and said things I regret. So I think a lot of that's happening. To go back to the question of what to do about it, well, I guess I don't know why I'm going back to it because I don't have the answer. But I think the only thing that can be done is for all of us, if you're on the right, to go back to some of the basics that we talked about at the beginning of the conversation. Like, what is it that we want?
Exactly.
What is it that we actually want?
What's the real catechism here? What does it mean to be on the right?
Exactly. What are we? It's the classic question about conservatives. What are you trying to conserve? It's a good question. You should be able to answer that.
Here's what conservatives are trying to conserve: endless wars, endless debt, endless corporate welfare, endless regulatory apparatus, endless trade war, endless deep state scams and schemes and psyops and child sex trafficking ring cover-ups. That's what they're trying to preserve. Essentially, what the Democrats put forward 10 years ago is what's trying to be preserved by the ruling conservative establishment. Is there any calls to repeal Obamacare anymore? No. Has there ever been real, true calls to repeal Medicare and Social Security? No. Has there been any true calls to remove the empire from the world? No. That is what conservatives conserve. It's much more likely that conservatives will conserve the IRS than they are any semblance of having a mind frame of limited government. That's the truth.
You should be able to answer that. What are you trying to conserve? And everybody needs to ask themselves that and come up with an answer. Write your list, write it out if you have to, whatever. Come up with your list.
I'm going to do this. This is my
Right.
calling right here.
And everyone should have their list. And then we should compare notes. And if our lists match up, like we want the same things, we're trying to conserve and preserve the same things, then the only way forward is with that, is for us to realize that, like, let's reorient towards that. Make that the goal. And remember that even when we disagree, we're going to have disagreements, but we're only disagreeing about how to do this thing that we both want done.
Yeah, in a way, I see his point on that one, but it's like that seems more and more unfeasible when one faction of the right literally believes that the other faction is committing, enabling, and making excuses for a genocide. So this is where single-issue coalitions come into play. It seems like it's much better politically in this new age of independent media to coalition by issue and not by tribe, because the tribes are breaking down. The tribes were locked in this left-right diaphragm, this left-right prison of sorts, a paradigm that was built around us by the political establishment, and they don't make much sense anymore. And Israel's the perfect example of why they don't make sense. It's Anna Kasparian going on right-wing news shows like Tucker Carlson's and others talking about all the overlap that they have in opposing this Israel first mentality. That's a good thing. And it seems like if you're just going to confine all of your politics to the right and go about this sort of strategy, it doesn't seem to work when people are more at each other's throats over this issue. I think rightly so, because of the lack of the moral courage in Zionists to denounce this, reject this, and somehow sell it as America first. That we're going to side with Israel, get into a new war with Iran, bankroll a genocide in Gaza, and then make excuses when Mike Huckabee meets with Jonathan Pollard, an Israeli convicted spy who gave U.S. naval intelligence secrets to the Israelis at the height of the Cold War. They're going to make excuses for Israel bombing Qatar, a U.S. ally, at a time when we don't want to make it look like that it really is Israel first, even though it is. It's just too absurd. It's impossible to swallow for the American people. And I just have to say, this fence sitting by Matt Walsh just makes him look like a moral coward on Israel. And I get it. Matt Walsh has tweeted that he doesn't believe in any foreign aid, and someone asked him, does that include Israel? He said yes. To his credit, he said yes. But he's not willing to side against the Israel first mentality in Washington. He wants to cultivate these friendships, including who pays him with Ben Shapiro. But, Brett Cooper and Candace Owens had a severance from the Daily Wire. Maybe Matt Walsh will. And maybe if he does, we'll get to learn more about what he truly thinks, if he does actually have animosity toward that warped mindset. But like I said earlier, there's basically nothing separating Lindsey Graham and his foreign policy preferences from his bosses, Ben Shapiro. So break out that clip of Nick Fuentes going, get back to work, Matt Walsh. Do not oppose Israel. Get back to work. Oh, sorry, Ben Shapiro. I'll get back to work. Break that out, because that's what you might be seeing in this situation. So, one of the reasons why I loved Ron Paul so much was he took a moral stand even on issues where it was most unpopular to do so at a time when it was most unpopular to do so. He said we shouldn't be supporting either the Palestinians or Israel. He stood up on the debate stage and told Giuliani, you know why they attacked us over here? Because we're over there. The U.S. is empire building. It's supporting Israel at every turn. It's starving out the people of Iraq. It's engaging in endless war and foreign policy hegemony experiments, which only leave us with more debt, more enemies in the world, a curtailment of civil liberties in the form of the Patriot Act and the DHS, and the surveillance state. That's what we get. And that's why I admire Ron Paul. But a lot of people just aren't Ron Paul. They're not willing to stand on principles when it's most important to do so. And that's right now when it comes to Israel. And it was not even right now, it was years ago. But right now is a time where the right is uniquely looking at this as something that it can be a funnel toward reality, truth, and morality to oppose the Israel First doctrine at a time when hypocritically this president is supposed to stand on an America First platform. Just make America great again, not Israel. So you see the bastardization of that and the impulses to support Israel at every turn to the detriment of the U.S. in ways that are very striking and clear. But that's what you have. What do you guys think? Do you think Matt Walsh is right about this? Do you think that it's wrong not to have a moral stand on this? How could the MAGA Civil War be resolved? And how monstrous are the neocons and the Zionists? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Tucker Carlson. Great show. Really impressed by the segment. Good interview in general. There were some interesting moments in it. Also, if you like this video, please consider joining as a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button below. And if you do that, you'll help support the channel, which I'll graciously appreciate. And I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. Also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below. It'll send you off to a website. You just plug in your email and I'll send you the PDF copy of that book free of charge. No obligation whatsoever, just because I appreciate you. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.
If you don't consider a possibility, then you're clearly not working to get the truth. Right.
You're not doing your job.
You're covering something up. The U.S. government failed to protect the country, but they did nothing to mitigate the effects of the crime once it happened.
My head split in half when I read that quote. Literally. Like, I just was
She's
like...
been rewarded. She runs Hoover.
Tucker Carlson just exposed undeniable foreknowledge on the part of the U.S. government about the 9/11 attacks. And this is in the context of a conversation with a 9/11 widow, a woman who lost her husband on that day, became a single mom on that day, who's fought for the truth ever since and has been smeared for it. So let's watch. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
But I know on 9/11, there were stock trades that proved foreknowledge.
Absolutely.
Of the airlines, of the banks, in the buildings that were hit. And the U.S. government said, yeah, we know who did those. We executed those trades, but we were not going to tell you.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Well, what is that?
That's what I'm saying. Like, how unbelievable. And so what happened is when the U.S. government doesn't take it upon itself to have a prosecution, to have an investigation, it's left to the victims' families to hire lawyers and do it on their own. And you're really hamstrung to do that. Like, you're talking about a terrorist attack where all the documents are classified. It's all held by the government. Everything that you need to learn about your case, to build your case, is in the government's hands. And the government refuses to give you that information. And so we're kind of left in this limbo where the U.S. government didn't do its job to prevent the attacks. Then the Department of Justice after 9/11 didn't do its job to prosecute or hold anyone accountable and provide justice to the murdered victims' families. And so the murdered victims' families turned to the civil litigation process, which, if everyone remembers OJ, it was what Nicole Simpson's family had to do. It's kind of a shitty second. It's really not helpful. And so that's what we were relegated to. And then those attorneys, not all of them, but many of them, were just unwilling. First of all, they were unwilling to sue the U.S. government. And I asked. I've got the emails to prove it. And then I asked,
why were they unwilling to sue the U.S. government?
They told us we weren't allowed, which is not true, because in the wake of, the last 20 years, you see the Emmanuel Church family suing, you see the Fort Hood family suing. You are allowed to sue the U.S. government. Our attorneys initially told us that we couldn't. Of course, we were also forced into what the government did, which was the Victims' Compensation Fund, which was retroactively taking away our right to sue by capping liability levels from 9/11.
Yeah, they tried to pull every trick in the book to conceal this thing and hide the fact that there were puts in the options trading market in the days prior to 9/11 that had an effect and implied foreknowledge of this attack that were concealed from the public. And the 9/11 report tried to just flush this down the toilet by saying, on October 6th, an influential airline industry analyst lowered his earnings and estimates for several major airlines. But at the same time, the 9/11 report itself held that there was no evidence suggesting that those had advanced knowledge of the attacks traded on the basis of that information. They withheld this and said that they investigated and interviewed people that went into trades that were unusual, so to speak, pertaining to this. But we're not going to tell you the names. Those have never been divulged, even though the government knows about that. And we're just supposed to ignore this just about the same way we're supposed to ignore Saudi connections to the 9/11 attacks. And anything regarding Building 7, which wasn't covered basically at all in the 9/11 attacks. And I've only drawn more questions since then. So yeah, she's right about that.
So what happened was 9/11 happens, the towers collapse. You know, the country is worried about being destabilized. The economy is going to crater.
Right. The airlines.
So supposedly Congress swept in, heroically and created the airline stabilization bill. And I don't know how they wrote that bill because it's pretty precise, but yet somehow they wrote it in like 9 days. And in doing so, retroactively capped liability levels for anyone, for the airlines, for the city of New York. Later, like 2 months later, President Bush capped the liability levels for Boeing Airlines. And essentially the widows and kids were left being told, you're not going to be able to sue because there's not enough money to pay you. There were so many people killed. There's just not enough money. So you're going to have to go into this victims compensation fund run by this special master, and you'll be paid an amount of money and it's no fault, and go away. And, as an American citizen, a lawyer, I was like, wait a minute, you're not allowed to take away someone's right to sue after the murder. Like, that's not how it works. And yet we weren't given a choice. It was shoved down our throats. And so that's what we were left with.
And the legislation that created this was written in 9 days?
Like 9 days.
So
and it's pretty comprehensive.
You're a lawyer, as you just said. How hard would it be to write? So you can take the first 3 days off because it's right after 9/11. The country's in chaos.
I don't know. Condi Rice, immediately after 9/11, is sitting with the National Security Council. And I was like, how can we capitalize on this opportunity? So
she said that?
She said that. Capitalize on this opportunity.
That's so evil.
The pile was still burning. And how can we capitalize on this opportunity? My head split in half when I read that quote. Literally. I just was
She's been rewarded. She runs Hoover.
Yeah, she has been rewarded, and the families have been given the shaft by the government in so many ways on this. Uncovering this has brought many eyes toward this, even this many years later, and Tucker's series on it covering it has done that. But fact check, she's exactly right. This legislation was written within 9 days of the 9/11 attacks. Here's the bill. I found it in PDF form. It was passed by Congress on the 22nd of September. It was presented on the 21st. So if you're saying that it wasn't started to being written on the actual day of the attacks, 9/11, it took 9 days. And if you're scrolling to the bottom of here, it says it. It was approved on September 22nd, 2001. This bill literally was bailing out the airline industries, even though there's a lot of evidence that analysts connected to the airline industries had foreknowledge of the attacks. This bailed them out 9 days afterward. Comprehensive. And yeah, Condi Rice and her friend Zelikow have profited immensely despite looking the other way at the 9/11 attacks at the very least. And we know that from declassified memos, including one that said Bin Laden determined to strike within the United States, and even talked about possible hijackings. They ignored this at the worst and let it happen at the best. That's the truth.
Close friend of Philip Zelikows.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
so my point is, we were not allowed to, first of all, the U.S. government did nothing. We were relegated to this fund that was quote unquote no fault. There was going to be no trials, no investigation, no hearing, no discovery, no cross-examination, no jury. And so what we were allowed to do was to sue the co-conspirators. But again, the U.S. government didn't go after any quote-unquote co-conspirators. They threw them all down at Guantanamo and waterboarded them, tortured them. So there's no, going after them, right? And so we were left with the civil litigation system. Lawyers, many of whom were like aviation attorneys. One group is former big tobacco attorneys. And they were willing to go after the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And the rest of these entities, whether it was a foreign government, Emirates, Pakistan, or the U.S. government, we were told no can do.
What about Israel?
Oh, that would have never come up.
Why?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, to me, when you're not asking very, pragmatic, obvious questions and people don't even ask the question, or if you do ask the question, you just sort of get shut down. To me, that makes me suspicious, right? Like, why aren't we going after those countries? Why isn't my country looking into those countries and what they knew?
Well, here's the secret, because Saudi Arabia is the second greatest American ally in the Middle East. And the United States wages a starvation blockade on the part of the Saudis against Yemen because of it. And it's been that way for many decades. The actual war has been going on for over a decade, but the U.S. government has been linked to the Saudis for longer than that. And they treat U.S. families like this lady's like dirt, not getting to the bottom of the answers and prioritizing these foreign regimes. And guess what? Especially the Israeli regime. But she's right. And beyond this, there's even more evidence that the United States had advanced foreknowledge of this, because we know that two of the 9/11 hijackers, Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midhar, the CIA was trying to recruit those two hijackers through a Saudi intelligence figure named Omar al-Bayoumi. Now, Omar al-Bayoumi helped them get their start in San Diego. They were part of the San Diego cell there. And by proxy, the CIA got Bayoumi to try to recruit them to be inside men into Al-Qaeda. And the CIA didn't give this information to the FBI until August of 2001. And by that time, the plot was hatched. The plot was finished. Bayoumi said when interviewed, like, I just met these guys in a chance location in a halal cafe in Los Angeles. But he's the one that set them up with apartments, with living items, with identification cards, help them get their start in the United States. And even the FBI acknowledges, due to a declassified document, I believe it was declassified in 2022, that says that even the FBI of all entities believe that Omar al-Bayoumi had at least a 50% chance of foreknowledge about the attacks. We never got that. We never got that knowledge, and we never got told the truth about that.
And yet there's never been an interest. And I think that that's suspicious.
Well, by definition. I mean, science and law enforcement have one thing in common. Every possibility has to be considered, maybe immediately discarded. But if you don't consider a possibility, then you're clearly not working to get the truth. Right.
You're not doing your job.
You're covering something up, not trying to illuminate it. Again, by definition. I can't let this pass. I don't want to forget to ask you about it. At the outset of our conversation, you said not only did the U.S. government fail to protect the country, prima facie, but they did nothing to mitigate the effects of the crime once it happened, something like that. What does that mean?
Right. So not only did they fail to prevent the attacks from happening, which Tom Keane, commissioner of the chairman of the 9/11 Commission, clearly said, the 9/11 attacks 100% could have and should have been prevented. There was enough information in the pipeline for it to be stopped on a number of occasions. It's not just like one instance, several instances where the plot could have been unraveled, stopped, 3,000 lives saved, okay? Or at least the attack delayed in enough time to learn more and really stop the ultimate attack. That's number one. But on the day of 9/11, the U.S. government did absolutely nothing in a defensive posture to mitigate the damage of the attacks. What does that mean? First and foremost, my husband was on the 94th floor of the second tower. He called me after the first building was hit. And he's like, I don't want you to worry. It's not my building. Don't worry. And I said, what's going on? I'm truncating the story. And he said, they're telling us to stay at our desks. Well, an elevator in the World Trade Center went to top to bottom in a minute's time. If at 8:58, the Port Authority and the companies didn't tell people like my husband to stay at their desks and told them to evacuate, those people would have gotten below the zone of impact and survived in the second tower. In my opinion, there is no excuse for any loss of life in the second building.
And this is exactly correct. This is widely documented. They made up several excuses to justify this, to not allow people to escape, saying that, this would just increase people's frustrations and anger and, irritability by asking them to evacuate. And there was all sorts of excuses under the sun to justify this, wrongly so, and they continue to lie about it year after year after year when so many more lives could have been saved.
And in the first building, the only loss of life should have been above the impact zone. Okay. That's one way that lives could have been saved and damage could have been mitigated. Number two, Christy Todd Whitman told the rescue workers all of New York that the air was safe to breathe. We were told early on when people caught, that we were, the Jersey girls were fighting and trying to get the truth. We were told that the sniffers that were put around ground zero, they're supposed to be at a certain height above the ground to sniff the air. They were above the point where they were supposed to be, so that the air that they were testing wasn't the actual air that people were breathing. Okay. Another prime example, the air was not safe to breathe. I don't know what was used in those attacks, but I know that it's caused a lot of cancer. Okay. But
I think that's pretty much proven at this point.
I think it's pretty much proven.
Certainly is proven. And the 9/11 Commission was a total sham. First of all, George W. Bush was dragged kicking and screaming to even allow for such a commission to study this terrorist attack and what led to it and what the deep state knew about it. And it was completely defunded. They did everything they could to put their own stranglehold on this commission to prevent the truth from coming out, funding it only initially with $3 million. Eventually, over time, I think within 9 months or something, it got up to $15 million. But this was a minuscule amount for the biggest terrorist attack against the United States compared to other commissions of its kind. In fact, when I went through some videos on this in the past, it turns out that the U.S. government had funded commissions to drop propaganda to propagandize Americans to accept the weapons of mass destruction narrative against Saddam Hussein to prepare them for the invasion of the Iraq, much more so than they funded this task force that was given the responsibility of getting to the bottom of this. And we'll never get the answers. They didn't tell us the truth. They withheld the Saudi connections and in redacted pages for years and years and years that didn't come out until the prodding of people like Thomas Massie and Justin Amash, to their credit. And they had very limited subpoena power. The U.S. government tried to curtail and inhibit their subpoena power such that they couldn't get the answers that they needed when Americans needed it most. This was the paramount example of the government investigating the government and determining that the government had done nothing wrong. That's what you always get with internal investigations of this kind. Thankfully, the independent media is here to displace the legacy media. Tucker Carlson had a great, I think, 5-episode series about 9/11 and really the truth, what the feds withheld from us, what we know about foreknowledge, some of which was covered here. But to me, the CIA connection to 2 of the 9/11 hijackers, that should have been, one of the biggest scandals ever uncovered in American journalism. And basically everyone ignores it. The stock trading story related to 9/11, everyone ignores it completely. We're not going to get the answers because the government doesn't want us to get the answers. And instead of giving us the answers and treating us like human beings, despite them being parasitic, living off of us and the extortion apparatus that supports them, the IRS, they will drag women like this that lost their husbands through the dirt as they sought the truth for decades over time. That's what our government does. There's no more heinous activity and behavior than what they've shown in that regard, is there? But I do want to hear what you guys have to say. Do you agree with this? Anything else that indicates foreknowledge of the 9/11 attacks? We have Abel Danger at the CIA, with several CIA officers saying that not only Muhammad Atta, but some of the other hijackers were identified prior to 9/11. There's that too. There's all sorts of stories like this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, also subscribe to Tucker Carlson. Thanks for this awesome segment. Great interview with this lady. I recommend you watch the whole thing. And if you like this video and want to become a YouTube member, I'd really appreciate it. You can do that by clicking the join button down below. If you do that, you'll help support the channel, and I'll really appreciate you for that. So much so, in fact, that I'll give you access to all of my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. Also, You'll be able to get a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, if you click the link in the description below. That'll shoot you out to a site. You just plug in your email, and I'll send that to you in PDF form, completely free, no obligation, just because I appreciate you. And until next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.